Welcome to another exciting episode of bringing Jesus back into focus, because he's been made very blurry, and so has the loving spiritual creator who's only love in the loving spiritual world and universe, which is only spiritual, because they've overlaid the old Jewish two-headed God Yahweh and their Jewish religion on top of Jesus and the loving spiritual creator of love. So I never bothered about it, of course. I left the Jewish Christian Catholic Church when I was 16 or 17 because of this lie that there's only one God in the Bible, when clearly the Jews worship two very opposing godheads, a very brutal, murdering, thieving, genocidal war god called Yahweh One, and another Yahweh of love and peace, as in love your neighbour as yourself. Just as the Romans had Mars and Pax, a war god and a god of peace and love, the Greeks had Ares and Irene, god of war, god of peace. The Egyptians had Sekhmet and another god that was more mellow. They had their war god. The Jews had their war god. They all had the same ceremony: sacrifice an animal, go to the temple, priest would bless them, off they go to war, kill, murder, steal the land, the valuables, conquer. The Jews were no different. They worshipped two different gods. But regretfully for the Jewish people and the Christians now who have become Jewish Christians, they've never honestly said there are two different gods. They should have had two different temples, a war temple and a god of peace and love. But they put them into one temple. And that's a really serious mistake to make. You don't put your satanic war god in with your loving God. That's a schizophrenic cracker. So not to worry. I'm here to help Jewish Christians in particular come away from the Jewish religion. There is some love in there. So there's Yahweh One, love, war. Let's say Yahweh One's a war god. That's a war god. Yahweh Two's some love there. But you've got love in the Quran, you've got love in the Bhagavad Gita, you've got love in Buddhist teachings, you've got love in the Sikh religion, you've got loves all over the place. But Jesus was a pacifist, as Buddha was a pacifist. They're the ones you want to get close to, these beautiful spiritual teachers who have perfect equanimity and who are pacifists and non-violent. They're the ones that will lead you into your spiritual awakening, that then when your body of flesh dies, you'll be safe. You'll be in a much more beautiful world than this one. Much more beautiful universe, I imagine. Don't think that this material universe is the only universe. You don't have to think that. Or if you want to, if you think there's a spiritual place in this universe that's a different energy. A lot of New Age children talk about energy and vibrations. I say life force, a loving life force, and a spiritual energy or a spiritual life force. Just completely different. So I had to start writing about it. I never bothered, sort of thing. But then once I went and visited all these churches in the last 5 years, once I got this fungal infection in my body that's nearly ending my physical life, I thought, I wonder how everyone's been teaching about Jesus since I left, because I took Jesus with me. I took his words with me. In the entire Bible, all I focused on my whole life, even since I was a child, was just his words. In fact, I remember sitting in the Catholic Church as a child wondering, why are they reading the Jewish religion to us? Why are they doing that? We're not Jews. Even as a child, just intuitively blessed from heaven, I just knew, why bother about that? That's really mixed up. Of course, once you reach 16 or 17, you not only intuitively sort of understand it, but you can really see how messed up it is, So two different gods. So I've written two books. One is simply a gospel translation called The Gospels of Jesus Unplugged, which are simply the translation to the Gospels. But instead of using Our Father, I use loving spiritual creator and loving spiritual life force instead of Holy Spirit. And I've tried to make them much clearer. I removed Jewish redundancies, Jewish overlays, the apocalyptic sort of rubbish that's been put on top of Jesus. That's all gone from these Gospels. They're all from Greek interlinear translations, so they are the proper Greek translations, along with, of course, other Bibles that I used as well, and to try to find the best loving sort of way to write the Gospels in a translation which still holds on to the true meaning of what Jesus was saying. One simple example is this: in all Bibles around the world, generally speaking, there's the part where Jesus says, I'm the cornerstone. To the Jews, he's saying, I am the cornerstone of the new understanding of God. You've rejected me. Anyone who falls upon this cornerstone will be broken to pieces, but whomever this cornerstone falls upon will be crushed. I ask a lot of Christians what they think that means. The vast majority think that Jesus and God are going to destroy all the bad people. The Greek translation in my gospel, which is correct, says the Greek fall can also mean to come against or to alight upon, in the same way a little sparrow may alight upon your shoulder. The same word fall can mean alight upon. The word crushed in the Greek word, the Greek interlinear word crush, can mean winnow, to winnow you of your sins. So my translation in my gospel translation of the Greek is, whomever comes against this cornerstone, I will break your false identity to pieces and reveal your true identity. And whomever I alight upon, I will winnow you of your sins and reveal your true identity, your true spiritual identity. Now that's the correct Greek translation into modern language, which Jesus was meaning. That's the correct meaning of what Jesus was saying. But the way they've deliberately inflected it towards the apocalyptic Jesus, the apocalyptic God of the Jews, Yahweh, one, the war God, crush, smash to pieces. So it's a really evil sort of slandering. I don't do that. They're love, so I do my best to make sure I represent them in the books as love. Now the teachings of Jesus Unplugged, we'll be reading from that now, the next chapter, I think it's 13 on equanimity, only a short chapter. That's to be published around the world in this first 2 weeks of January. So it's because of the illness I've got, the fungal infections poisoning my body and brain, so I'm in a lot of pain, like meningitis all the time. But I've been able to put it together with the main points. So I'm sure any Christian who's a Jewish Christian, I'm sure they'll find it quite interesting and challenging, because it's only using the words that are there to point out the obvious. So this is the book that's about to be released on the world, which talks about Jesus' teachings in a more clearer understanding and a more truthful way. The back of the book sums it up. The spiritual teachings of Jesus are a universal calling to all human children on earth to awaken into our spiritual body and true identity of love and non-violence before our dualistic body and mind of the flesh dies and returns to the earth. Only our spiritual body and soul live on. We must prevent the dualistic mind of our earthly body of flesh from controlling us and become at one with our spiritual mind, filled only with the loving life force of our loving spiritual creator. Then our two bodies, one made of the earth and one formed of spirit, can be in harmony and at one in purpose to bring the spiritual love and peace of heaven to earth for all children. Only true spiritual children of light and love can enter the heavenly spiritual world. All those children divided within themselves between love and hatred cannot enter. The words of Jesus can awaken and transform us. Every day I devise this prayer because I'm so ill, which I love to say to make sure I'm in my spiritual body, that Jesus says, Chris, you've got a spiritual body. He said, get into it before your horse dies. I like to think of us as spiritual riders on an earthly horse. We've got to look after our horse, but they all die, like all our pets die, you might say. And also we're like water in the vase. I'm the spiritual water in the vase, and so are you. You're the spiritual rider on an earthly horse. So we've got these two bodies. They're very different. When our earth body dies, we don't die. But however, our spirit can end up in a really dark place. And that's what Jesus is warning everyone about, to be filled with light and love, so you go to the right place, not like the warmongers of the present generation. So this is the daily prayer, and if you just say this, or write it down, or I can send you a copy. If you email me, I'll send you a PDF of it. This is the prayer to center you into your spiritual body. I use the word she for God, for the divine spiritual being of love. She contains both male and female pronouns in the one word. Plus women give birth, so why not think that this loving creator gives birth to our spiritual body? Why not say she? Generally women are softer, kinder, more loving, generally speaking. I know there may be exceptions, but generally speaking. Most of the warmongers in the world are rock ape males, sort of just demented sort of rock apes, gorillas, just males, So it's a great tragedy that they've become these dark shadow figures. But most women don't tend to start, wars. not in the world. Maybe on the home front in the kitchen or something, I don't know. This is the prayer to send yourself into your spiritual body. As I rest upon this earth, the Holy One, she will give birth to who I really am. awakening me from clay and sand, a spiritual child of the divine with only her love that fills my mind. To every creature I will be kind in every single land, for this is truly who I am, a spiritual child of the loving spiritual creator in the heavenly spiritual world, born out of the earth to bring her love to children in need and help guide them home to heaven as she has guided me, through the spiritual way and teachings that Jesus gave us to be, just as he, a spiritual child of love on earth. That's my Spirit Earth logo that I use. The cross is, of course, represents the dead body of flesh of Jesus that was buried and rotted and didn't rise again. He left in that dove body, the spiritual body, which he said is exactly what happens when he said there are two in a single bed. One dies and one is taken to be near to our spiritual loving creator. So that's his teachings. We have two bodies, and the one that dies, the body of the flesh, he says, you know what you can do with that? You can feed it to the vultures. It's written there in the Gospels. But the Jewish Christians, they got another agenda. So this is the chapter on equanimity. It's only a short chapter, so I'll get straight into it. In order to become like Jesus and also be a living spiritual child of love on earth, of our loving spiritual creator in the heavenly spiritual world of love, we must have two very important spiritual characteristics as part of who we are. They are forgiveness and equanimity. As we must become a bridge of love flowing from heaven to earth for every child of our loving creator, both good and evil, it is vital we do not allow any blockages from arising in us that may prevent that flow of love from going out of us to any other child in need. We've got to keep the inside of the cup clean, is the way Jesus put it. Definition: what is equanimity? It's a state of mental balance and even-mindedness towards all. Jesus said, our Creator's love is like the sun that rises on the evil and on the good, like the rain that falls on the just and on the unjust. If you wish to be her spiritual children on earth, your love must be as perfect as her love towards all. There's the benchmark. He said it. That's what we got to be like. Jesus had perfect equanimity towards all children, as all children have a spiritual body and soul of love to become at one with before their body of flesh dies. Jesus wanted every one of them to find it. Unlike the Jews, he mingled and dined with sinners, outcasts, and children of different faiths. He allowed lepers to come near him and touch them to heal them. He mingled with the poor and the rich, the young and the old. He gave the teachings of love to anyone who wanted them, even a Samaritan woman whom the Jews detest and have nothing to do with. He would heal any sick child of our loving Creator who asked him, even a Roman nobleman's child or a Roman centurion's servant. He could forgive anyone, even those who nailed his body of flesh to the cross. He had perfect equanimity, empowered by the perfect love of our loving spiritual Creator, and taught us all how to have it too. His loving spiritual life force flowed out to anyone in need. Even the Pharisees knew he had equanimity when they said to him, Teacher, we know that you are true and teach the way of our Creator truthfully and have no regard for the position of men and show no favoritism. Even they knew he was different, really different. That's why they hated him. That's why they were envious and jealous and killed him. Plus he, of course, slandered their war god, Yahweh One. There are many ways the flow of love from heaven in us can be blocked if we fail to have equanimity within our spiritual character. Many followers of Jesus judge and condemn everyone else who do not follow Jesus, saying they cannot enter heaven. Some Judeo-Christian churches even judge and condemn other Judeo-Christian organizations by saying that their church are the only true followers of Jesus in the world. And other Christian organizations are evil because they teach the teachings of Jesus in a different way to them. This Jewish overlay of thinking they are the only chosen ones of our loving spiritual Creator in the whole world is seriously flawed and comes from the dualistic Jewish religion. It is not Christian. It immediately blocks them from receiving the fullness of our loving Creator's loving life force to share with all other children. This also applies to all other spiritual religions who believe this exclusion dialogue too. For our loving Creator loves all her children in this world, just as Jesus did, and her spiritual way is inclusion, not exclusion. Equanimity in us as her spiritual children is the base for inclusion. Equanimity helps us see beyond the bodies of flesh or lifestyles that are different to our own, to see the spiritual child of our loving Creator within and still love that child of our loving Creator. Without equanimity, the flow of love can be blocked by such things as racism, prejudice towards other groups of children different from ourselves. Arrogance and looking down on others, judging them as being inferior to ourselves in the workplace, on the street, or any given situation blocks the flow of heavenly love. This arrogance cannot arise in us if equanimity is present in our spiritual character. Equanimity is the base for respecting others. As Jesus said, "Judge not, and you will not be judged. Condemn not, and you will not be condemned." Withholding money from those you see in need when you have plenty to share blocks heavenly love flowing into you and through you. Equanimity helps us establish and manifest our primary spiritual identity of love by sharing extra money freely with those who have little or none. For we see them as being our siblings and equal as children of our loving Creator. And money has no value anyway in the heavenly spiritual world to come. Only love does. Equanimity is a base for generosity and sharing by seeing others as ourselves. Jesus said, "Give to him who asks you, and from him who wants to borrow from you, turn not away from him. It is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the heavenly spiritual world of love." Being unfair towards anyone blocks heavenly love from flowing into us and through us. Equanimity in our spiritual character will always guide us to be decent, honest and fair when interacting and dealing with other children, treating them all like close friends or family. Seeing other children as strangers and not connected with you can block the flow of heavenly love flowing into you and through you to them. I have a beautiful example of this from a great teacher I had called Sandy 7. When caring for my elderly mother Lorraine, I would often take her in her wheelchair with our Labrador dog Sandy 7 to a beautiful 300-acre park called Westerfolds by the Yarra River in Melbourne. We would sit at the far end away from all the traffic noise and just rest in the natural surroundings of the park, enjoying a chat, a drink and a bite to eat, including a bone I always took for Sandy 7. There was a bitumen one-lane road that wound around the circumference of the park for bike riders and walkers. As we sat, I noticed some people walking down the road towards us, some way off with a couple of dogs. I looked at Sandy 7 and could see her eyes asking me if she could go and say hello to them. I said to her, "Go on." She joyfully got up and started running up the hill towards the people with their two dogs, with her tail wagging and her face smiling. The people stopped as she ran closer to them, and she greeted those strangers like they were long-lost friends she hadn't seen for 30 years and completely ignored the dogs. She was almost human. She demonstrated perfect equanimity and love towards those people and was more spiritually advanced with perfect equanimity than many human children. She was a beautiful spiritual being of love, and I miss her loving companionship. She died a few years ago of cancer. Another beautiful teacher I had of living out of the spirit, forgiveness and equanimity was my sister Joan. She was born in 1949 with cerebral palsy, which rendered her left arm and both legs useless. Her twin sister Anne died soon after birth. She spent her whole life of 73 years in a wheelchair. She sadly left her body of flesh in her perfect spiritual body in 2023 from cancer. Our beautiful spiritual mother Lorraine cared for her at home until she was too old to continue, and Joan went into a care home for the last 20 years of her life. But by then she had an electric wheelchair and could be more independent. She was a member and ardent supporter of the Australian rules football team Collingwood. She would go to all the games she could in Melbourne. In 2018, her team made it to the grand final against a rival team called West Coast Eagles. We got tickets and I took her there in the van we had with a hoist to take her out in. There was a crowd of 100,000 people at the MCG Stadium to watch the game. Before the big game, there were various entertainments and stalls outside the stadium for people to enjoy before the game. As we wandered through the grounds, a family of West Coast Eagles supporters came towards us dressed up in their team's colours of gold and blue, while Joan was regaled in her black and white colours. As they came near, Joan called out to them, "Enjoy the game and good luck." The opposition, the enemy. I do not know of many fans of any sporting club anywhere in the world that would wish the opposition team good luck. Only a spiritual child of our loving spiritual Creator could do that. For Joan, it was all about being alive and full of the Spirit, not about who wins or loses a game of football. She was also able to forgive anyone who ever hurt her. She was a natural at it, unlike most of us. From the start of her life on earth, she knew more than her 4 siblings that we are not our body of flesh. For although her body was damaged, she didn't need it fully working to be spiritual and flow her love out to others. Even the enemy rival football team supporters. She was really a really bright spirit. Yes, I miss her. Unfortunately, there are other children who also wear different coloured uniforms and are deadly rivals. But they are not like my powerful sister Joan. They are weak-minded, evil, and have become beasts of the flesh and worship the god of death, theft and destruction, and are devoid of spiritual life. They are the warmongers whose teams of heartless soldiers wear different uniforms, but are actually all on the same team of Satan. He leads them into battle to kill and slaughter children of our loving spiritual Creator, just like the war god of the Jews and other distorted old world war gods, now replaced by satanic human leaders who are egotistical, psychotic killers like Hitler, Putin, Netanyahu, Hamas and others. They love to dominate other children, seek revenge, to steal and force them to their will through punishment, death and war, and are totally lacking in spiritual equanimity and love. Without spiritual equanimity, any child could end up being filled with hatred and revenge towards other children, becoming a dark shadow figure devoid of spiritual life force, like all who take up the sword, gun or drone to kill other children. Having the spiritual characteristic of equanimity within you is an important vital quality that acts as a base for peace and prevents wars and the slaughter of children. Equanimity allows you to see everyone as a child of our loving spiritual Creator, even though they may be currently caught in the darkness of their own evil. We must see them through the eyes of love and try to bring them out of that dark evil, not become like them. Jesus said, "I did not come to be served, but to serve others. If anyone desires to be first, he shall be lowest of all and servant of all. Whoever humbles himself like a little child is the greatest in the spiritual heavenly world. For he who is least among you all is the one who is great." My physically handicapped sister Joan and dog Sandy 7 were greater and more powerful in spirit than all the deluded, evil warmongers of this world. They are pathetic. I feel very sad for them. They're heading for hell. God is love, and love is the true life force in your spiritual body. It's just love. It's a loving life. It's a real life force, energy, whatever you want to call it, vibration. We are all children of our loving spiritual Creator. The only difference is some know it and some don't. And that brings you back to the 2 bodies teachings, you see. So there you go. So by all means, if you wish to contact me about any of this, you can just pop on here to jcinfocus@gmail.com. If you've got any questions, I mean, what I've written is very short and brief, and I've had to just get something out because I was so sickened by the slander that the Jewish Christians are still teaching. You know, that the Jewish religion overlay onto Jesus it's poisoning him and the loving Creator. So I just got really angry. I never bothered investigating it because I knew he was love and violence, so I didn't have to worry. But then I realised they're still teaching that garbage. So you can email me at jcinfocus@gmail.com and certainly be very critical if you wish, but you better have a good, logical, intelligent argument, only based on Jesus' words. Otherwise, it won't stand up. My late father Jim was a brilliant engineer, really sharp mind. Wow, he had a clear, sharp mind. And my mother was also very intelligent and a very beautiful, intelligent faith. She was totally spiritual. He was totally sort of practical love. He employed people and fed them and clothed them for 40 years in his business or more. So he sort of manifested practical, material love. She was the spiritual light in the family from heaven. So I've got both of these sort of qualities of the material necessities that we have to help the poor, etc., as Jesus taught in physical life. But then there's the spiritual driving force behind it, which my mother was just totally at one with. So it's a really incredible dynamic to make sure that we don't fall into the trap as Christians. You don't worship Yahweh. Don't do that anymore. I'm telling you to stop it. Stop teaching it to children. Have a meeting about it at your hierarchy and your, the Mormons, the Seventh-day Adventists, whoever you are, the Jehovah's, Catholics, Protestants, Pentecostals. Have a meeting about this. Have a look at the lies that you're teaching children and try to substantiate them. Substantiate the slaughter at Jericho, where Yahweh, supposedly, you teach the God of Jesus, went and told them to commit genocide, steal all the gold and silver and take it back to his temple. Just wake up. Pull your head out of the sand. Cut the Bible in two. I always advise people, the Bible is not the Christian religion. That's the Christian religion there, that little bit there. That big bit there in the Bible, that's the Jewish religion. If you're a Christian, you don't need this at all. Not at all. I've never needed it. Just his words are enough for me. Maybe I'm a simpleton. That's okay. Unless you're like a little child, you won't get into heaven, Jesus said. So, lucky I'm not a university-trained theologian or cardinal, brainwashed. So I'm waiting for some churches to talk about this, discuss this openly. The lie of 1700 years that there's only one God in the Bible, it's a stinking lie. The Jews worship two gods. If they want to do that, that's their business. But don't teach the followers of Jesus that Yahweh is the exact same singular, loving, spiritual life force from heaven and the spiritual consciousness of heaven. Don't teach children it's Yahweh, because you're saying this stinking, filthy, murdering, genocidal war god, Yahweh 1, is the father of Jesus. Along with Yahweh 2, the God of love and forgiveness. Don't say that. If you want to say that loving God is very close to the God of Jesus, that's great, say that. Yahweh 2, fine. But never lie or slander Jesus by saying the war god of the Jews has anything whatsoever to do with Jesus, my great friend, my loyal friend, my lifelong friend, my pacifist friend. He teaches me how to get to heaven. So stop slandering him. Pope Leo, get on the balcony there at the Vatican and say, sorry everybody, sorry, 1700 years, we've had a bit of a mistake. There actually are two gods in the Bible. One's a war god that the Jewish people follow. So cut your Bible in two, everyone, put that on the shelf. We're just going to stick with Jesus' words, rip out the book of Revelation, because that's the book of Daniel, the Old Testament book of the Jews. Rip that out. That doesn't belong in the new wine. That's old wine. Sorry about that, everyone, but I'm coming clean. I'm speaking the truth, because obviously they must know it. Any logical person, intelligent, knows it. I met many people who know it. They've left the Catholic Church because they know it. So the church has to face up to it. Speak the truth and start a new Christian Catholic Church that's just Christian. You might be able to get people coming back instead of driving them away. Mind you, they do a lot of charitable works. You see, there's the problem. The new wine's there of the love of Jesus and the loving Creator, but so is the old wine, the murdering killer, Yahweh 1. Jesus said, don't mix the new wine with the old wine. You'll miss the understanding. The Bible, one wineskin, Old Testament wine, new wine in one wineskin. They did exactly what Jesus said not to do, the Christians. They're the Jewish Christians. Before that it was just Christian. Then they converted them in the 4th century to be Jewish Christians and worship Yahweh instead of the only loving Creator. So you're worshipping a different God if you're a Jewish Christian. You don't even know it. But because there is a loving Yahweh there, it's sort of, you might get through the maze and the labyrinth, and you've got Jesus. He's only love, so you can go to him and he'll connect you. But then they'll still tell you he's coming back on the clouds to cause famine, drought, wars, to put sores on children's bodies, to starve people to death. Jesus is going to do that, coming on the clouds. I've been in churches, Jewish Christian churches, where they teach that. That is filthy, stinking slander. Stop doing it. Wake up to yourselves. I get a bit angry. Why not? He's my friend. If someone was slandering my mother, I'd do the same. But she's in heaven, so she's okay. The only thing to do in this world is love your way to heaven. There's another world. It really does exist. You do die of the flesh. That dies. Everyone dies. It doesn't come up from the earth again. That's a Jewish overlay stuff they had to put on to hide the truth, which is your spiritual body leaves your physical body. But then you reap what you sow. It's not simple. It's not like, oh, I'll do all these bad things, but it'll be fine. God will still love me. It's not like that. Buddha didn't teach it. Jesus didn't teach it. They both taught you reap what you sow. So I certainly totally believe that. There is a spiritual force that's helped me in my life. I can't see it, but when I've been in trouble, they've sent me signs and wonders to help keep me going. When I've been persecuted and all sorts of evil's been done to me, but they couldn't stop me. So it's quite interesting the way heaven can help you get some good things done in the world, despite being attacked. And all children of the loving spiritual one are open to attack, because we won't play the game of worship money or, all that sort of rubbish. We're more interested in getting to heaven sort of thing, and how do we become love now, and how do we make sure we overcome our own imperfections, which I've had plenty of them come and go. And I'm always, like everyone, I've got to keep weeding the garden of my spiritual garden, Oh, there's another weed growing, I better get that out, That's not a good thought, whatever. Or a good action, whatever. Better nip that in the bud. So we all have that work to do, myself included. But I know his love and violence. I've known that since a little child. I've never needed the Jewish religion at all. Well, I remember one Catholic priest saying to me, I showed him a bit of what I was doing. He said, he raised his eyebrows and said, it might be good if you studied some of the Old Testament first, because then you'll understand who Jesus is. I just thought, wow. I was like 62 or something at the time, I was 64 or something, I don't know. I just thought, I've always known who he is. In fact, if you study that, you may not know who he is. If you study the Jewish religion, you may not know who he is. You'll get lost. You'll get a perverted understanding that he's coming on the clouds to kill and murder and, start wars. Better not to study that religion. So he was wrong, of course, but I didn't say anything. It's better not to study the Old Testament. You got to, as Jesus said, do not mix me and the new wine in with the old. The wineskin will burst and you'll lose the new wine. I mean, he said that. That's what he was saying. Don't mix this in with the Jewish religion, whatever you do. That's a two-headed God. This is singular. Only love. Anyway, I'm warning everyone. Bobby Collier, he's on YouTube. Bobby Collier, he's worth looking up. He's more traditional than I am. But he really gets into it. He really gets into the Old Testament, pointing out where this war god is. He's great. He's interested in all that. I'm not that interested in it. I had to look into it for the book, of course, just to get some evidence. But he loves pointing out that the Jews worship a war god, and it's not the God of Jesus. So Bobby Collier, he's worth looking up. But as I say, he's more traditional than I am. I'm more sort of universal because I've studied Buddhist teachings, and love is love, Okay, love your way to heaven. Bye for now.